Internet, and welcome to another Wednesday serial. New toys, new month, new comics, and this time we're talking Turtles, so it's the new run, and Jason Aaron's initial setup has come to a close with issue 4, which is really his fifth issue with the Turtles. Here we get a lot of rehash of the Alpha issue, that fifth issue, I guess, where we're back to Donnie, who's been in a imprisoned and in a coliseum like setting where a bunch of mutants have been captured and they're fighting, not really like in a pure coliseum way. It's like set up big game hunting where locals will come and pay an amount to kind of like beat on a mutant, but it's Donnie, so he's been taking a number of them. Eventually builds to where all the people who he's beaten up come at once to just do him in because the people running the place feel they need to get rid of him. He's causing too much of a problem. At the time he decides to make his big break, as this is happening, the rest of the Turtles come in and the Foot Clan's there, and it's revealed that Donnie has become mentally unstable to a certain degree. So that's where we're at. This is interesting. So Jason Aaron is a creator I've been up and down with, as many have been. And he's certainly written some great stuff. I'm currently working through Southern Bastards, and that's been a fun read. Well, not fun, but interesting. And I'm still developing my opinions there. But that's his wheelhouse. And he's done great things with Thor. I heard mixed stuff on Avengers. He did his Punisher run, though, more recently, and that was bad. that was bad. And every Punisher fan I've interacted with agrees it's bad, even ones who liked his previous run with the character. And this here, I don't want to say this is a bad story. There's some intrigue. He's doing a little something different with each turtle. We'll see how much that matters once we're on the other side. But I'm not loving this, and I'd rather be more where we were a few months ago. I know opinions were more mixed with Sophie Campbell doing it, but I was enjoying that run and thought it did a lot of stuff very well. And this run so far to me feels like bad fan fiction, and I'm not too excited to see where we're going, but I also kind of want to see what happens next, mostly so that we can get to the next thing and hopefully to a new creator and be on board again. But with what I was saying with Sophie Campbell was doing well was a lot of the mutant metaphor, oppression, social justice, that kind of thing. And who's picked up the ball with that is Uneba and Federated Pro with Nightwatcher. So the big reveal of the first issue, which is well past now, is that Jennika is Nightwatcher. This is the character that was introduced in the old CGI movie for Turtles and was Raphael at the time. This is Jennika, but it hardly matters who is under the mask. What's interesting here is with Mutant Town and how they're going about things, it's a vigilante type character in pure form without the need for like a secret identity to matter too much, but more that Jennika has people that cares about her and is part of a community that cares about her because she's dealing with people at the edges of society and people who are in morally gray situations, doing bad things, but for understandable reasons ish. Dealing with a criminal who got bad with other criminals, but she saves him. But to what end is kind of where one of the issues goes, because it just makes the gang that she dealt with puts a mark on her with them. And then he goes off and is freed from the island to be away from them so that they don't try to kill him again, but doesn't really have anywhere to go or anyone that really cares about him. And he's probably going to have to make similar moves when he lands wherever he does, because there's no legitimate way for him to make money pretty much anywhere. And it doesn't take much to see the allegory of like a migrant worker who kind of fell in a bad way, maybe given a break to go somewhere, and then what are they going to do at the other end? And that's the thing, is the metaphor is there to keep it fun and digestible, but the stories here are emotionally resonant with this kind of layer of culture that we don't want to interact with too much, and is where I think a lot of people talk about the strength of X-Men and the metaphor and all that. And the comics really reach those heights, are willing to tell those stories. And this is doing that in a way that I don't think, I mean, earnestly, outside of maybe a handful of some of the heavier X-Men comics or whatnot, just do not touch. You don't see that regularly. So that's incredible. I actually, if it wasn't such a weird pull, I'd be recommending this book to pretty much anyone. It's really pernicious. I think once a collection comes out, I'm hoping that it takes a new height, because this is a book that should kind of escape the velocity of the Turtles fandom and actually be recognized for what it's doing, because this is so much of what I think people want to see in comics, or at least a lot of people want to see in comics, and we don't get to so often. No fandom, no fanfare, no sparkle, just kind of gritty vigilantism without being try hard or any of that, like a bad Batman comic or whatever. This is staying on the message, at least so far, 3 issues in. Next up is Mutant Nation. This is kind of filling more the role of where a lot of the B books used to be in the old run. There's actually kind of 2 stories in here. One deals with the Foot Clan and Casey Jones, kind of the human sector of characters, and what they're kind of getting up to, which I'm sure is going to play in. And the other is Raphael dealing with Metalhead going after Jenica and whoever, and ends up being kind of just a interesting side story that's going to develop in part 3. And both of these are part 2 to be part 3. And it's like 2 half comics playing along, which I don't like the split comic part, but I enjoy the stories so far. And it's an interesting way to go about the publishing of this without adding yet another title to an already full plate. And then, with what seems to be with the Turtles everywhere across media right now, there's just crossovers. There's a million video game things going on. They have this, the Turtles of Greyskull, which is Turtles and He-Man, which is a Turtles Renee story from my perspective, with this He-Man thing thrown in. I don't really know Masters of the Universe or any of that, but this has been a fun read. This is by the team that brought the Batman Turtles comics together, so if you're fans of those, this might be worth checking out just on that merit alone. I know a lot of people like that. And then the one that caught a ton of buzz, and I was kind of surprised because there's been a million of these Turtles crossovers, and outside of the Batman one, which I think was going to get some buzz because it's a DC, outside of DC crossover that tends to get a little more. If it was Marvel, it'd be bigger. But this one hit kind of that pitch. Turtles and Naruto, a lot of people are really liking it. I know a little bit of Naruto, and it all fits. It's interesting how they're blending the characters, and the fact that a few of the Naruto characters have these animal totems, and Naruto's he's an outcast of society, and that he's the kid that's picked on. He's not quite where the Turtles are, but there's some kinship that they're leaning on and going to develop there. And the way they're playing this actually is, instead of trying to do universal crossover, this is like the Turtles live in this world, and their sensei, Hamato Yoshi, is known by some of the characters already inhabiting that world. So they're not doing the normal thing there. They're just playing it straight that way, which at the very least I appreciate, for just moving the story along. And by playing with new universal rules, you kind of get to reveal some of that end of it, which I think should be fun. Next up is Turtles 19, this idea of Old Hob actually coming in as a villain and stealing all this gold that's set up earlier in the issue, which is going to tie into something with getting Shredder back from another universe, blah, blah, blah. This has been a really fun series. These all feel like episodes of that show, but if they were made now. And this one has an added wrinkle of Old Hob in there, which is a character from the IDW universe, but they brought in here to bring in a fit. And I do appreciate that the series has gone to some lengths to have Shredder and Krang around typically, but also bring in other characters, which is something the show didn't do as much. And that keeps it interesting to read now. Light thoughts on a lot of the Turtle books. I think it's a really interesting place right now, where the main book, compared to not the crossover, the 80s cartoon stuff, but compared to the other stuff in the IDW line proper, the main book is the weakest that we have right now. And I'm really curious to see how kind of the strength of all that they've built kind of carries on the line, especially right now, because it's, I've said this before, and it's going to continue to be true for probably at least another year. IDW is hinging on the success of Turtles right now, and it's big. If you look at kind of the top selling books and whatnot, the Last Run and stuff, and Turtles proper is in the mix with a lot of the bigger players. And that is, especially when it's not like a big number one or a big explosion like the Last Run initially was, it's really interesting to see that this book is kind of at that level. So sales wise, it's interesting to see that. And I know, as much as I have mixed feelings about Jason Aaron, that name brand recognition and kind of treating Turtles like more of a comic property, which is part of what this new line is doing, is making this more akin to a DC or Marvel moving forward. Again, I don't love it, but as long as we get good comics, who cares? So that's interesting. And we'll see where it goes. So far, more positive than negative, I think. And I mean, even the stuff I don't love about Jason Aaron's run in this so far isn't like bad. But when you take one of my favorite characters and screw them up, I'm not gonna love it. But it's comics; it'll be back. But I don't know. We'll see. It might be a painful few months as we work through the storyline. And then because I don't really have anywhere to put it, because I'm not getting a ton of indie books, especially because I've moved more to reading this sort of stuff more in trades. I got Saga. It continues, and it's weird because it's very much in line with where the book has been, especially since the slow roll of the relaunch. But compared to where that book began and all the heights and all the things that you remember from when Saga was big, the book is just kind of moving and setting pieces still, and I'm kind of waiting for something to pop off. I'm waiting for something to go, to move, and it's not just talking heads and angst, but something new. So that's that, and I'll be soon with more proper Marvel DC talk soon. Thank you. And if you're anyone coming in for more the blue sky side, because that's newer, I appreciate it. Thank you, and I hope this is interesting enough to check out when I talk Spider-Man, X-Men, DC, whatever else. Peace.